Good afternoon. Pete's bet on baseball is now public. Judge Norbert Nadel had been keeping the document secret, saying it had private information about people not involved in the Rose case. But faced with an Ohio Supreme Court order to release the document today or justify why not, Nadel let it go.
In view of the time constraints given to us by the Supreme Court, we discussed this with counsel, I feel that we have no other alternative but to release the material, and as of 5 o'clock, this material will become a matter of public record.
Well, John London is in our newsroom right now, and he has a copy of the report that we just got a hold of. John?
Jerry, we have obtained a copy of it. As you say, it is a thick copy. It's volume 1 of 9 volumes. It is 225 pages. This is the report that Judge Nadel ordered released at 5 o'clock. And in it, it says, as John Dowd testified to during the past few days here in Cincinnati, that Pete bet on Major League Baseball and on the Reds. That is what baseball's investigator is saying. In fact, take a look here at part of the summary of the report, what Dowd says. The testimony, he says, and the documentary evidence gathered in the course of the investigation demonstrates that Pete Rose bet on baseball, and in particular on games of the Reds baseball club during the 1985, 86, and 87 seasons. Now, the report also goes into Pete's relationship with a man by the name of Michael Bertellini. Michael Bertellini, we are told, lives in New York, and the report says that he in turn placed bets on Rose's behalf with an unidentified bookmaker in New York City. Quoting from the report now, Rose's financial records reveal checks in the amounts described by Bertellini made out by Rose to fictitious payees. Rose denied placing bets with Bertellini and denied owing anyone money. He did, however, acknowledge that he sent 11 $8,000 checks to Bertellini, but said that those were for loans for payments to athletes for a baseball card show. Now, I want to read you just a brief portion of the report with regard to Ron Peters' testimony. It says here that Peters testified that he took bets from Pete during the period from late 84 to late 86 when he stopped taking Rose's action. He stated that Pete Rose bet on professional football, college basketball, and Major League Baseball, specifically on the Reds 85, 86, or specifically on Major League Baseball games 85, 86, 87, including games by the Reds. And then goes on to say that although Tommy Giosa usually placed the bets for Rose during this period, on 4 to 6 occasions, Rose contacted Peters directly. On one of these occasions, in 85 or 86, quoting from the report again, Pete Rose called Peters to place bets on baseball, including the Reds. Peters recorded the conversation, then played the tape back to Pete Rose. Rose became upset, asked why he had taped him. Peters explained to him that he wanted an insurance policy to make sure Rose would pay his gambling losses. The report concludes at that point saying the tape, however, cannot be located. In the back of the report, it lists 15 instances of corroboration of Ron Peters' testimony, including, it says, betting sheets obtained from Rose's home and found by an expert to be in Rose's handwriting. It says the betting sheets contain a listing of Major League Baseball games, including the games of the Reds, with the results. As I say, we just got this voluminous report just a short time ago. We're in the process of reading through it, and we'll have more information about what it contains later on tonight.
John, I understand that this report, just to put things into perspective so we don't go around convicting anybody here, this is what the John Dowd has come up with in his report. There is still the opportunity for Pete Rose to answer these allegations, and as I understand it, he's going to deny what's in the report.
Oh, absolutely, and that has been made pretty clear over the past few days in court, and also it is alluded to in here. As you read through, you see allegation, and then Dowd lists some of Pete's responses to that, and in every case, as in the case with Michael Bertellini in New York, he has denied it.
Okay, thank you very much, John. John London reporting from the newsroom. As we said, we just got hold of the report. It's 250-some-odd pages. It's going to take an awful long time to read. We will have more of a report on it as we study it more tonight at 11 o'clock.
Well, so now we finally are learning just what baseball has on Pete when the report is released now. And there are other developments in this as well. News 5's Jeff Hirsch joins us now live to show us how lawyers for Major League Baseball made a highly unusual move today to fight the latest ruling on Pete's favor. Jeff?
Well, Norma, as you know, Pete Rose was supposed to be in New York today, and Bart Giamatti was supposed to have John Dowd's 225 pages right in his hand and confront him with it. That didn't happen because Judge Norbert Nadel postponed everything. Nadel gave a temporary restraining order saying that the commissioner could not hold the hearing at least for a couple of weeks till Nadel decided whether it was fair for him or not. Major League Baseball went into court today, tried to overturn Judge Nadel's ruling, saying that Judge Nadle's decision was improper and illegal.
We further find that the hearing set tomorrow in New York before the Commissioner of Baseball would be futile and illusory, and the outcome a foregone conclusion.
And with that, Judge Norbert Nadel blocked today's scheduled meeting between Pete Rose and Bart Giamatti over Rose's alleged gambling. Nadel set another court hearing on the issue for July 6th. But today, baseball appealed, asking Judge Nadel's order be thrown out and that the showdown between Rose and Giamatti go forward as quickly as possible. Quote, "The image of a sport no longer capable of policing itself in a matter as serious as a manager betting on his own team's games could only erode public confidence and respect for the national pastime. The ability of the commissioner to protect the integrity of baseball, the purpose for which his office was created, is at stake." Unquote. Baseball is trying to get a temporary restraining order suspended. Legal experts say that's not easy.
Very tough to appeal a granting of a temporary restraining order. They're going to have to exercise some mental muscle and go through some legal gymnastics to do that. But it's doable. Not usual, but doable.
Lawyers for Pete Rose have until Wednesday morning to file their paperwork. Then the Court of Appeals will decide. Of course, it's unknown when the Court of Appeals will decide. Baseball is hoping it will decide before July 6th. One other thing, which is lost in all of this stuff with the report and with the baseball appeal, Pete Rose is also the subject of a federal grand jury investigation about taxes. So that's a whole other issue which has kind of been lost in all of this. But we must stress, as you have, Jerry, that Pete Rose maintains his innocence throughout. This is Jeff Hirsch live at the Hamilton County Courthouse.
All right, thanks a lot, Jeff. Of course, still on that part of it. Jerry?
Well, most of what's been happening to Pete Rose is going on in court and not on the baseball field, but that's where Pete is now, and Ken's here to tell us how things are going down at the stadium.
Reds and Dodgers began just a little while ago, last game in a 4-game set. Let's go to Thom Brennaman, who's standing by live right now. He had a chance to talk to Pete over the weekend. Tom?
Well, Kenny, today, as far as today is concerned, Rose was in a meeting for better than 3 hours with General Manager Murray Cook and his coaching staff. You get the feeling that a trade might be in the works in talking about baseball between possibly even the Reds and the Dodgers. We'll see about that a little bit later. Pete's not talking to anyone today, but yesterday he did get together in an exclusive News 5 interview with our lonesome George Vogel. Pete told George this whole mess has hurt his reputation and had a story to prove it.
Well, we were in L.A. Last week and a half ago, and we landed at the airport, and Jeff Ruby and his wife was with me, and my wife and my little boy, and we got in this cab, and there was an African driving, and he's been in this country for like 5, 6 years. And Jeff, I was sitting in the front with my son, and Jeff was teasing. He said, "You know who Jeff Ruby is, a famous restaurateur in Cincinnati, Ohio?" And the guy says, "No, sir, I don't think so." He says, "You know who Johnny Bench is?" And the guy says, "No, I don't think so." And we went about another 2 miles, and he said, "You know who Pete Rose is?" And the guy said, "Yeah, he's the gambler." And I said, "Yeah, and I'm gambling right now, riding in this front seat with you around this mountain here."
So obviously Pete Rose has maintained somewhat of a sense of humor. However, it doesn't all seem so funny when this gets going come July 6th. Live from Northern Kentucky, Thom Brennaman, News 5 Sports.
Okay, Tom, a trade, huh? How boring.
Yeah, baseball. Oh, well, we'll get back to you later, right?
Baseball Commissioner Bart Giamatti is watching these proceedings from New York, of course. In an interview about an hour ago, Giamatti told reporters he's not happy that Judge Nadel released baseball's confidential report.
I didn't decide to release the report. I wanted to keep the report absolutely confidential along with everything else. When it was the subject of the lawsuit, we had to file it in order to defend it. Once it was filed as a public document, eventually these things get released.
Other than that, Giamatti says he is not commenting on the appeal until the hearing is over.
Pulling your kid out of the Little League. The whole thing's starting to give more than a few of us a bad taste. Indeed, the lawyers have taken over baseball, and yesterday the Reds got more TROs than RBIs. It's crying shame, and it needn't be like this. It's time for less law and a little common sense. And see how easy this whole thing could be. I mean, what's the issue here? It's whether Pete bet on baseball or the Reds. And that's a no-no, and Pete knows it is. And there's a good reason for that, because if gamblers get too involved in the game, there'd be too much incentive to fix the games, and the integrity of baseball would be lost. So the rule's good. No betting on baseball. Well, did Pete bet on baseball? The investigator has put together his report. Pete now wants a chance to show that the report's all wrong. And he wants the case heard before an impartial judge. He doesn't think Giamatti's fair. He thinks he's already made up his mind prior to hearing Pete refute the evidence. Judge Nadel, at least to this point, agrees. Meanwhile, Baseball Commissioner Bart Giamatti says he is fair. He is impartial. He has not yet made up his mind about Pete. This is what the lawyers are arguing about. Well, is Giamatti biased or can he be fair? Well, how about a little common sense here? Why doesn't Giamatti simply say, look, I'm as honest and fair as the day is long. I have not already determined that Pete is guilty. But since the most important thing here is finding the truth and preserving the integrity of baseball as well as Pete's rights, I'd like to avoid even the appearance of having been biased. I'd like to lift the cloud that will inevitably hover over this case no matter what decision I now reach. So, I'll step aside here, agree not to hear this case, and we'll have baseball appoint somebody else or an agreed-upon panel to hear the evidence, maybe a former federal judge or even a former president. If Bart Giamatti would just say that, he'd be a national hero overnight. He'd have put the game ahead of his pride. Pete would have no excuse for not going ahead with the hearing. Both sides would be heard. The issue would be out of court. The question of Pete's betting finally settled. And once again, we could play ball. It'd be less dollars for the lawyers, but more common sense for the game.
Now, Cincinnati's News 5 tonight.
Good evening. The report which holds the future of Pete Rose is now out. And as its author, John Dowd, said it would, it says Pete bet on baseball. It says he bet on the Reds. Indeed, often to the tune of $2,000 a game.
The 225-page report compiled by the investigator for the Commissioner's Office bases its findings on a number of interviews, phone records, bank records, and betting sheets, which Pete strongly denies are his, and according to his attorneys, will be clearly refuted once the case is tried on its merits. Now, we secured a copy of the report late this afternoon. News 5's John London has been poring over it and joins us now in the newsroom. John?
Jerry, there is a lot in the report itself that makes for interesting reading, particularly the reference to Pete's bank records. The report says they show Rose wrote checks made out to fictitious people, sent them to a man in New York in order to pay off a New York bookie. But even after pouring through the report, it still seems to boil down to who you believe. A big chunk of the report, 72 pages worth, is a chronology of bets allegedly made by Rose during the first 3 months of the 1987 baseball season. According to Dave Morgan, an associate of Ron Peters, that is when Rose would win a lot of money, quote, near the beginning of the baseball season when Cincinnati was winning a lot of games. The key evidence, 3 betting sheets said to be in Rose's handwriting, Paul Jansen, all-time grades. Jerry?
John, you mentioned the betting sheets as evidence. Where did baseball get those betting sheets?
According to the report from Paul Jansen, who readily admits that he took them from Pete's home.
Wouldn't Jansen's fingerprints then be on the sheets too?
I suppose they would be. That is certainly an issue that Pete's attorneys will most likely raise, and they will also contend that Pete's handwriting is not on those betting sheets. They say they have their own handwriting experts who are ready to speak up about that when the time comes.
What do they say about the phone records that are in this report?
I would imagine they will probably say prove it. The report is replete with examples of calls that were made from Pete's home, from the hotel room, from the dugout, from Jansen's car phone. The report says betting records from Jansen and Peters detail Pete's gambling. He lost a couple thousand here on the Reds. He won a couple thousand here on the Yankees, etc. But here again, Pete's lawyers will most likely raise the issue of credibility on that one.
Okay, thank you very much. John London, who spent much of the evening poring over this report. We'll continue to look at it. I suspect we're going to hear a lot more about it in the coming days.
While everyone was focusing on the legal issues, Pete was keeping an eye on the Reds tonight.
News 5 Sports Director Ken Broo is down at the stadium with Pete tonight. He joins us now with a report on what Pete said.
It's been a busy night between the Reds and trying to read this thing.
You got that.
I can't remember what I've done other than that tonight. Through all this, Pete is trying to stay focused on the game. During the warm-up tonight, our photographers caught a glimpse of him, putting the troops through a little workout. And then later on, while the team worked on its first win in days. Now, when it was all over, Pete finally told reporters what he really thinks about this report.
No, it's such a biased report, it's unbelievable. But we'll face that. Because there's not a damn thing we can do about it. The laws of baseball are great, but they have to abide by the laws too. And we don't think they did, and that's why we went to court, because we feel he already made judgment. And me and my team evidently aren't the only people who feel that way.
Interesting change of posture for Pete Rose, who for so long said no comment. and then was a little defensive, now seems to be firing back. You almost get the feeling that he feels they fired their best shot. Now it's time for him.
Okay, thanks a lot, Ken. Now, I talked with Pete's attorneys tonight, and he expects some negative public reaction, of course, to baseball's report, but he tells me he's confident he can refute every allegation in it, from betting slips to phone records. The major concern of the lawyers is getting a fair decision-maker to hear Pete's case.
Through all the recent legal maneuverings, Ron Peters, who calls himself Pete Rose's bookmaker, has been keeping quiet. But in an exclusive interview with News 5's Steve Forrest, the man known as Pete's chief accuser tells us he won't be the one to bring Pete down.
You're a student of baseball at this point, I'd imagine. You know about the Black Sox. You've also got to know that there are probably going to be people out there already who are saying that you will go down in history as the man who brought down Pete Rose.
Yeah, they're going to say that, but in fact, Pete's the one that brought down Pete Rose, not Ron Peters. He knew what he was doing.
Now, that is just part of what Peters had to say, but because of an agreement we have with him, this is the only part of the interview we can show you tonight. Pete's lawyer made us promise not to air the full interview until 6 o'clock tomorrow. Please tune in to News 5 at 6 to hear the full exclusive interview. As for Baseball Commissioner Bart Giamatti, he says making the report public is the last thing he wanted to happen.
I didn't decide to release the report. I wanted to keep the report absolutely confidential along with everything else. When it was the subject of the lawsuit, we had to file it in order to defend it. Once it was filed as a public document, eventually these things get released.
Giamatti refused to answer reporters' questions about the legal maneuvering surrounding this whole battle with Pete.
Now, as far as the battle in court goes, here's where we stand. After Judge Nadel granted the temporary restraining order yesterday, lawyers for the baseball commissioner have now filed an appeal to the ruling. They say the hearing by Giamatti should take place as quickly as possible, and that the integrity of the commissioner's office is at stake. Pete's lawyers have until Wednesday morning to file their paperwork. That's when the hearing on the appeal is scheduled.
And you're going to have some thoughts on this whole legal stuff later on. Coming up in these days, but what has all the hype done for the sale of his baseball cards and memorabilia? According to this Price Hill store, the 1989 Rose card is going fast in fear that this may be Pete's last year. Collectors say memorabilia and older Rose cards have been moving kind of slow. I hear those rookie cards going for something like $800 bucks. Fantastic. That's all our time for now. Thanks for being here with us.